Hey, so welcome to my breakdown and analysis, I guess, of my song Separate Ways that I released early last year with Amelie. Now, the idea behind this was I realised that last year, despite it feeling like not a lot could be done, because that was true in some ways, I'd still somehow managed to put out 8 songs over the course of the year. And I just spent a bit of time around the new year kind of looking back and thinking about it all, and I realised I was actually, really happy, and I was really proud with what I put out. So a couple of people had suggested at other times that they'd be interested in this. So I thought I'd just go through them all. Now, full disclosure, I did go through a couple of the songs already, film them, and started editing them, and I just realised they were so long. They were well over half an hour. I was just rambling about too many tiny little things. I'll try and keep this as quick as possible and as kind of condensed. This is quite a simple song, so it's easy to do that with anyway. But if people are interested in having more detail and slightly longer videos, then just let me know in the comments. And I will take that into account and do slightly longer ones moving forward. But for now, this is a really simple song anyway, so I thought it would be a good one to start with. So if I just talk about the arrangement quickly, the majority of the song is just this guitar and the vocals. That's what kind of threads through the whole song. And originally when I wrote it, this is how it sounded, that's all that it was, and then when Amelie came on board it became a duet, and I just kind of, I felt like it needed to stay stripped back, it needed to stay soft and delicate, but it just wasn't enough. It sounded empty and it sounded flat to me. So from about the what I've listed as the break, but after the first chorus, from there on it kind of has a lot more. There you go, there's Amelie singing. But from the break onwards it has a lot more detail and a lot more going on in there. So in terms of what I've actually put in, it's just some drums, some violin, plucking, and some synths. That is all the song can be broken down into. And the EBow section, which originally came from the idea of having a string quartet, but I couldn't have that. So instead I played it on an EBow. And actually, I think the sound of it, it's slightly more muted, it's slightly duller, and it just fits it a bit more, I think. So if I take a quick look at the drums, all the drums are processed in a fairly similar way. I've just put some EQ on them, depending on what I'm doing. So the low toms, there's a lot of muffling going on, putting a high shelf on there and a high cut off there. And then the high toms, it's just taking out any of that unnecessary low end and the rumble that you get from it. And there's still a little bit of muffling going on. And then I've whacked them all through this Devil Lock. What that does is it just takes it, if I show you, it takes the two parameters you put, so crush and crunch. One of them is basically like compression, the other sounds a bit like distortion, and it just, combined with EQ, it takes this really harsh, attacky, transient heavy sound and it turns it into a much more squashed, thicker, duller sound. And then, so you see the difference. It felt a bit more kind of almost heartbeaty, which is what this part's doing. This part, it's just that loop, and then those two parts combined kind of give it that movement and momentum. And then the high toms doing a very similar thing here, but just slightly different tonal quality. There you go. It's just giving those rolls and so on, but just adding a little bit more depth to it than just the initial two parts. If I move on to the piano next, that was fairly weird actually, because all I had on me at the time, I did the piano while I was travelling, and so all I had was a 25 key keyboard, so I couldn't play the whole thing on one take. I had to play the right hand part and then the left hand part, which ended up actually producing a really nice bounce between the notes, so it's not all going at the same time. You know, there's almost like a pedal note going. Like that, and it just, I don't know, it created, because of the way I did it, and I'm not a great pianist either, I can do enough just to get by, but it ended up creating a nice effect in my mind of this kind of rhythmic effect that probably I wouldn't have done had I been playing in one go. And then there's an arpeggiator just coming in at the second chorus just to give it a bit more, I don't know what the word is, but energy, I guess. And I love arpeggiators at the best of times anyway, so putting it in there. When there's not a lot else going on in the song, it just kind of filled that gap that there was. So if I quickly talk about the strings, they I'm not a very good violinist. I don't claim to be a violinist in any way. I have one and I try and play it. So when it came to this song, I knew I wanted this plucking rhythmic sound, but I didn't know what it was, and I was just messing about with the violin. And there's a couple of other songs I've heard it on, this type of thing, I've heard it on, that I love, I really, really love, and I kind of wanted to emulate that, and I thought it had a bit of a place in this song. So, if I just play a little bit of it, what I did was I took this part, and then these 3 other parts where it's all just playing one note and then stacked on top of each other. So with these 6 tracks, it's just 3 notes being played, and then it morphed them in and out. So as you've got, there you go, now you've got a little bit of a harmony, and then as it fades out, the other one fades in. And I hope that's kind of obvious enough for people, but that's basically what I did with the strings. And that was kind of a matter of trial and error, of finding what I liked and what just sounded too abrupt, and then I didn't want it to be too repetitive of that's in, now that's in, now that's in. So I made sure to kind of hold and sustain on some parts. Sometimes it's fading, sometimes it's a sharper transition, like here, and this is obviously the fades. Now, the synths, I really, really like what I ended up getting from the synths. This is one of the Spitfire Labs pads. So Spitfire came out with this free plugin called Labs, and it's really, really minimal. It's got only a couple of parameters you mess about with for each sound, but they're really lovely, really, really lovely sounds. And this is just this first one. This first one is just acting as the main attack, I guess. And I'll show you what I mean. So that's obviously a much more identifiable note. Whereas this part here is a lot slower on the release, on the attack, sorry, and it's got more of a wavy sound to it. But then put them together, and they're basically playing the same notes. Same kind of chords, but then add them together and balance them to a point I like, and it kind of evens them out. So that top part where it's lacking a lot of release, that's filled out by this part, and then this part is lacking a lot of attack and it's filled out by this part. And the final thing with synths I did is this part, this thing here on Arcade. Now I love Output Arcade plugin. I use it a lot for creative purposes, and then often what I'll do is I'll then change whatever sound, but the initial writing I wouldn't have done without the use of Arcade. But the sounds on this were just so lovely, and it's this evolving, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess it's just a pad. That's the only way. But yeah, I found the pattern from all these different kits on it. And then layered it with this. And that's that. The final thing on the synths, technically it's not a synth, but I treated it as one. It's a piano chord with a load of reverb stretched out and then stuck together. And it's just this sustained note for the whole bit. But underneath the guitar and the piano, I really, really think it's a very pretty part. And then you can hear it slowly coming up in the intro as well. So the reverb tail of this piano feeds into this slightly. And it's not super obvious, but it's there. You know, if as well, if you know it's there and you're listening out for it, you'll hear it. But otherwise, the whole point of it is to kind of just subtly creep in, I guess. I will quickly say about this, I'd initially written a string part for a string quartet, but I just played it on the EBow because I didn't have any string contacts at the time, so that's all it is really. It's just, I'd written parts, so I've got 2 violins, or what would have been violins, an octave taking the place of the viola, and then this part doing the lowest part for a cello. And again, that's just sent off to a reverb. Now the vocals, all I really need to say is the effects I've used, really simple vocal chain. What I think I did there is, you see the little star, so I've just started off with a preset, probably the same here, and just given it a little tweak, added in and taken out some of their modules, added in some of my own, just to make it appropriate. But this song was very much processive, just quickly getting it done, you know, of not out of rushing, but just going with the moment of what I liked hearing, rather than spending hours agonising over it. And I think it's so stripped back, it's so simple, that I didn't need to go into super detail with things like the EQ and compression. As long as it was working and balanced, all fine, it was fine, you know? There's not a lot of things competing for the same place in the mix. Everything I've made sure is very individual in its frequency range. So the vocals here, the main thing to say is just really on the arrangement of it, is I didn't want it to just be I sing a bit, now you sing a bit, now I sing a bit, now you sing a bit. But obviously that's a part of a duet, and I didn't want it to all be all together. So the way we did it is we kind of took turns in the verses, like I'd take the first bit, Amelie takes the second, I take the first bit, Amelie takes the second in the 2 verses, you see. But then there are also these overlaid bits in the chorus and the second half, you see. So it's not always just I take this part, you take this part. There was a lot of working out of where we do harmonies or where we do an octave. So if I play the kind of mid-late ooze, I guess, it's very much about playing an octave or singing an octave. And same with the end chorus. Lately I've been thinking of. And then these parts, it's more about being a harmony. And just as I found you. And the final thing, which isn't anything about the post-production of the song, it's more about one of the choices I made going into editing it. I really didn't want to time correct any of our vocals together. Usually, if you kind of listen closely to a lot of my songs, I'll edit all of the backing vocals or the harmonies to maybe not always exactly, but at least fit and line up better with the lead vocal. Whereas in this, there's a lot of times where we're slightly out, and it just created the effect of a much more intimate live performance, even though obviously it's not live. It felt like the way to go, and it felt like the right creative decision. for this song. Now, I think I've covered everything I wanted to talk about mainly in this. Like I said at the beginning, if anybody has any desire to see a 30 to 40 minute video of me rambling about every detail, whether it's the de-esser I use to stop the squeaks on the guitar, or why I use this reverb on the EBOs, then just let me know in the comments. But I guess for now, this is the end of this one. So please do subscribe to me on YouTube, check me out on Spotify. If you like what you hear on this video or any of the other videos, go and give the songs a listen, and it really does help me out. And pop a little follow on Spotify. If you want to stay up to date with things, either click the bell on the subscription option for YouTube or follow me on Instagram at @ThisIsLukeLucas, or you could always do both because it would really mean a lot to have the support. I think the next one I'll do will be Sticks and Stones. If you have any particular suggestions for videos you'd want to see first, again, as always, just drop a comment. Other than that, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.